Hi, everybody. I'm Mike. This is Budget Guns and Gear Reviews, and you are listening to The Right of the People, where we use the first to defend the second every Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. So uncover your keyboards and fire up your fingers. Time to join the conversation.
Hey, everybody. I know this is not, in fact, 7 p.m. This is more like 11, 12 p.m. So, yeah, if you are not aware, I had to change my time slot because of work issues. My schedule changed, and I'm now working at 7 p.m. So, on the theory that they would be pretty frowny upon me wanting to run my live stream from work, I decided to go ahead and push this back to about 11:15. After driving like a complete idiot to get home, well, okay, that guy's wife, I know it's 10:12 where you are. It's 11:12 where I am. Anyway, after having to drive like a complete idiot and making a half-hour trip in 22 minutes, I've decided that I'm just going to push this back to 11:30 p.m. Eastern, 10:30 p.m. Central, in the interest of not breaking my neck and dying in a fiery crash. Because, yeah, that was a little bit rough. That just isn't enough time to get here and get everything going. So, yeah. On that note, let me say hello to everybody out there in the chat. And but before I do that, let me welcome my esteemed panel members, the Kingpin himself, David Bowling. How you doing, sir?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Glad you could make it on this late date, or late time anyway. And as always, the lovable yet irascible Squibload. How you doing, sir?
Happy to be here. Happy that the work week is over for some people.
Yeah, not me.
Meaning me. Oh, sorry, man.
Yeah, this is my weekend to work. Yay. I'm actually working at 12 tomorrow. Yay. 2:30 p.m. to 2:30 a.m. Yay. Yeah, that guy's wife says that's provided nothing happens at the end of the shift requiring paperwork. 2 to 10 shift is the pits. I have to agree. And it's easy to tell that you work in the corrections field, you know, as a nurse, but still you're in the corrections field because, yeah, you know how that goes, don't you? So, yeah, that's why I decided that we're going to go ahead and push this back to 11:30 my time, because that's the only way I can safely do this.
Now, I'm loosely associated with that because after they're done with you guys, they send them to some employment agency and they end up with me at the factory. So I'd like to thank you guys for your rehabilitation efforts.
Yes, no problem. No problem. Always glad to oblige. Here on the YouTube side, let's see. Because, by the way, we are simulcast over on Gun Channels. If you are not a Gun Channels member, you should be. I'm pretty sure everyone watching on the YouTube side right now knows about Gun Channels, but if you're watching this on the replay or listening to this on the replay as you're puttering around your shop on a weekend Saturday day and with nothing else to do, well, you should go on over to gunchannels.com and join. It is free. It is the water cooler of the Internet Second Amendment community. You can find someone to talk with and something to talk about over there 24/7, 365. They never shut down, and it's a cool place. So let's see. Over here on the YouTube side, we got Gun Loving Grandpa, Grim 90, Gabe Stark, Jason Stewart, Rich White, that guy's wife, Kingpin pulling double duty, 2 Live Moo, Armament and Axes. How you doing, sir? The Pro Conservative, who, by the way, says, prison or work with Squib. It's a tough one. On the Gun Channel side, we got Mr. White, David Bowling, and me. So thank you all for coming around and watching the late edition here. On the one hand, I'm not going up against Hank Strange any longer, so that's cool. Maybe once people realize what the deal is, they'll start watching here at the 11:30 time slot. Well, we got a lot to talk about this week. There is, as always, a lot going on in the firearm-centric world, the Second Amendment community. Obnoxious hopped in. How you doing, sir? Glad to see you. Let's see. You know, the first thing I want to talk about is so-called gun-free zones. I think that it comes as no surprise to anybody that I am of the mindset that gun-free zones, so-called, are nothing more than criminal protection zones. They're nothing more than guaranteed victim zones. They're nothing more than what some folks might call a target-rich environment, full of defenseless meat. And that's been proven time and time again. You know, all these mass shootings that have happened in gun-free zones. As a matter of fact, the ones that start to happen in zones that aren't quote-unquote gun-free tend to stop really quickly, don't they? Because it's, you know, the range isn't any fun when the bullets fly both ways, right? Well, this is starting to be that's right. Grim 90 says gun-free zone equals fish in a barrel. Absolutely right. You know, it and this is starting to maybe get a little bit of legs. I don't know. The first piece I'm going to talk about, well, actually, I'm going to talk about two pieces, so bear with me, and then we'll go on to the discussion. The first one is a piece from AWR Hawkins and Breitbart from June 8th. It's Parkland parent, ban gun-free zones, not suppressors. Andrew Pollock, father of Parkland, Florida shooting victim Meadow Pollock, says lawmakers' focus should be on banning gun-free zones, not suppressors. Pollock's observation comes as a ban on suppressors is being pushed by Virginia Governor Ralph Northam, Democrat, and other Democrats. But Pollock notes that the overarching commonality in high-profile public shootings is that attackers strike in gun-free zones where they know their victims cannot shoot back. They do this at schools like Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, Sandy Hook Elementary School, and Virginia Tech. At clubs like Borderline Bar and Grill and Orlando Pulse, and at movie theaters in Lafayette, Louisiana, and Aurora, Colorado. Pollock addressed the Democrats' focus on suppressors via a tweet Friday, in which he said, instead of banning silencers, how about we address the real problem, gun-free zones? If maniacs decide they want to do bad things, gun-free zones will fail 100% of the time. Silencers don't protect the shooter, gun-free zones do. To Pollock's point, Virginia Beach Police Chief James Cervera made clear officers found the Virginia Beach shooter by moving toward the sound of his gunfire. It should be noted that other Democrats, like Senator Mark Warner of Virginia, have responded to the Virginia Beach handgun attack by pushing an assault weapons ban, quote unquote. Pollock also addressed that push, telling Breitbart News, just like with every shooting, anti-gunners insist on gun control in the weeks following. But notice after the Colorado STEM School Highlands Ranch shooting and the Virginia Beach shooting, they did this without discussing the type of gun actually used in those attacks. That's because the attackers in both instances use handguns, not a scary-looking rifle. Not a single policy Democrats have proposed would have stopped what happened. By the way, as a complete aside, if anybody out there knows the exact model of handguns that this monster used in Virginia Beach, I would be curious to know. I have still not been able to find that information anywhere, and I've been looking. All I know is the caliber, a 45 caliber, but I don't know which model. So if anyone knows, please leave it in the chat out there, or if you're listening on the replay, in the comments below. Thank you very much, because I want to know about this. But speaking of Virginia Beach, the tragedy grows worse. I again, maybe I should modify that, because there, with the last one, I said that this isn't a tragedy, it's an atrocity. So maybe the atrocity grows worse. It has deepened in scope and is made much more poignant by this article from Pilot Online by Catherine Hafner from June 10th, 2019. Virginia Beach shooting victim considered taking gun to work over concerns about colleague, lawyer says. Kate Nixon had considered taking a gun to work on May 31st, the day a co-worker killed her and 11 others in the country's deadliest mass shooting this year, a family attorney said on a radio show Monday. The public utilities engineer was concerned about Dwayne Craddock, as well as one other person, said Kevin Martingale, an attorney working with Nixon's family. So on the night of May 30th, Nixon had discussed with her husband, Jason, whether or not she should take a pistol and hide it in her handbag, Martingale said. She decided against it because of a city policy that prevents employees from bringing weapons to work. The next day, Craddock, who had worked as a city public utilities engineer for 9 years, used a 45 caliber handgun with a legally purchased silencer to fire at colleagues in Building 2 of the city's municipal center on Princess Anne. On Monday, Martingale revealed the detail about Nixon's worries on WHRV's Hearsay with Kathy Lewis radio show. The night before it happened, they had that discussion, he said on the show. There was absolutely something big going on. Martingale told Lewis that he didn't have any more details about Kate Nixon's comments. Julie Hill, the city spokeswoman, said she was not aware of Nixon's concerns. Hill stressed that police are investigating all aspects of the shooting, including the information Martingale has shared. We're going to make sure that we cover everything that is part of that ongoing investigation, she said. The New York Times has reported that Craddock had recently begun acting strangely and got into physical scuffles with other city workers, including a violent altercation on city grounds in the week before the shooting. The Times also has reported that he had been told that disciplinary action would be taken. The Pilot has heard conflicting reports of such scuffles when interviewing city employees, and 3 said the information was inaccurate. City manager Dave Hansen has disputed the report, saying the gunman's job performance was satisfactory and that he was not facing any ongoing disciplinary action or forced to resign. Martingale was on the radio show Monday to re-emphasize the Nixon family's push for an external investigation into the shooting. Kate Nixon had worked for the city for 10 years. Clearly, family members want answers, and as many answers as they can get, he told Lewis. A week ago, Martingale emailed city officials a letter on behalf of Kate Nixon's family, requesting that the city release all records about the gunman and launch an external investigation into what happened. The attorney compared such a review to a comprehensive report that followed the 2017 Charlottesville riots and said on the radio show that he'd love to see the same people take the helm. If the city doesn't ask for an outside investigation, Martingale added, I'm hoping the Attorney General will take it on himself and just do it. A spokesman for Attorney General Mark Herring declined to comment. In a statement emailed to the Pilot last week, Hill said, these requests appear premature while the criminal investigation is ongoing. The Martingale told the Pilot that releasing many of these records would be discretionary under Virginia's Freedom of Information Act, but the only obvious person with a privacy interest would be the shooter himself. In a situation like this, the maximum level of transparency possible is appropriate, he added. Martingale told Lewis that he doesn't plan to take the issue to court, in part because he doesn't see a path to the courtroom due to sovereign immunity that protects municipalities from claims of legal wrongdoing. So, here we have a woman who was frightened, who knew that there was something going to happen, who knew and felt deep in her bones that she should take precautions, that something was going to happen and that she needed to have the means, method, and opportunity with which to defend herself. But she chose not to because she was afraid for her job. Because while the law would apparently allow it, city policy wouldn't. And that, in my opinion, is a damn shame. Squib, you have thoughts?
If I can get to the mute button, can you hear me okay? Hello?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, just checking here. Sorry. I got a concealed pistol license not long after Michigan changed the laws and went to shall issue. It used to be back in the day that you had to be a business owner or a retired cop in order to get a concealed carry permit. And they changed all that. I hardly ever carried. Most of the time I was at work. I'm the kind of guy that works 6 or 7 days a week if they need me to. I'm the kind of guy that is there on nights and holidays, and I've been labeled a workaholic. Yeah, well, so be it. It provides for my family. Well, my company, even though it wasn't in the employee handbook, and I always kept that in the back of my mind in case I ever had to defend myself if it was used against me, company had a no firearms policy. Now, in this state, all they can do is fire me. They can't prosecute me for bringing a gun to work if I have a concealed pistol license. And I needed my job, so I hardly ever carried. I mean, it's just one of those situations where it just wasn't practical. And for some people, they say, forget that, don't comply. And I understand where they're coming from. But like I said, I really needed my job. I had my family counting on me. And, that responsibility in my mind comes first before, trying to prove a point. So for the most part, I didn't conceal carry daily. Fortunately, we didn't have anything happen. One day I was supposed to make a delivery at a supplier, and that delivery got canceled. Well, a guy went in there through the loading dock, right where I would have been, right when I would have been there, and he went into the building and he killed his wife or girlfriend or whatever, and held up in there until he finally took his life. The SWAT team surrounded the building, stuff like that. Having that concealed carry gun might have been the difference that day if I had been there. And we did have an active threat at the building, but it was a bomb, not a gun. A gun wouldn't have really done me much good that day. But with as many people that came and went, and as many weirdos as there are at every job, I really, it would have been nice to have the ability to carry. It would have been nice for my company to support the state law and to say, hey, now that this is a shall issue thing, we're going to let responsible employees. The funny thing is, I took my concealed carry class at work. One of the sales guys convinced them to let us use the boardroom after hours as long as we didn't bring any guns into the class. And you don't need to have a gun for the Michigan class. So we actually used company facilities to save money on the class. A bunch of us at work, they knew who the employees were that were going to be there and their family members to use company facilities to save money on the course. So it was really kind of weird that they would let us use company facilities off the clock after hours to take this class, but they would not let us carry at work. And for somebody who doesn't comply and they're risking their job, do what you want. Do what you want. I mean, if she had just said, to heck with it, I'm not going to, it might have been the difference. It might have been a difference not just for her, but for other people. But you never know. In our day-to-day lives, how often does this sort of thing happen? It just doesn't. The odds are slim, but that still doesn't mean that you shouldn't have a right to protect yourself. And I hope that somehow or another they're able to sue the department there for having this policy. I doubt it'll go anywhere because it's a government thing, right?
Sovereign immunity.
Yeah. So, yeah, but I mean, they could still try. There's all kinds of, this is a frivolous law, it'll get thrown out, but people still try. So, I mean, I don't know, but I don't think they're going to change their policy because of this. I mean, we know the truth. We've looked at the numbers, we've analyzed the situations. Plus, a lot of us have got training and experience with this sort of thing, so we kind of know. And the politicians who set who make the rules and whatnot, they don't know. They're protected by armed security all the time. They have no idea, and they just never will, I think.
No. Kingpin, you have any thoughts?
Yeah, my first thing, talking about the last thing we're talking about with the lady who didn't take a gun to work with her. I've said it over and over again. Only dummies like us care about the law. And she's one of the dummies that cares about the law. And that's just how it goes, you know. That's the whole point behind this whole nonsense, which should be the end of the argument, but it never is. Bad guys break the law, good guys obey the law. When you make laws, only good guys are affected by the laws.
Well, here's the thing, because Armament Axis apparently agrees with you. He's out there in the chat. He says the sad thing is, if she would have illegally carried and saved many lives, she probably would have been prosecuted for carrying illegally. The thing is, in Virginia, from what I understand, it isn't illegal for her to carry there, because citizens, when they go into that building, are permitted to carry if they are licensed to carry a handgun.
Right, but because she's an employee, they probably would have terminated her.
It was a policy and not a law.
Well, plus you got to go back to
from it.
You got to go back to what Squib was talking about the rarity. She didn't know that was going to happen. So if it didn't happen, and it didn't happen for a year, and one day she was in the restroom and one of her coworkers saw her gun, she's just lost her job. And nothing happened.
And you're right, but if there's clear indications that somebody's on the train to Cuckooville, like there apparently was in this situation, I say trust your gut if it's not going to land you in prison. Because I'd rather be on the unemployment line than the funeral home.
Yeah, I know. I understand that completely. But what if the guy didn't do that day? What if the guy didn't do that for 2 months?
It's a risk.
But next week she gets found with a gun and she's fired, and then he still goes and does it.
And it's a risk. That's what I mean. The day-to-day thing, concealed carry, open carry, carrying a gun day to day. Your likelihood, it's just that one day, that one time. You say, well, if you don't carry it every day, then you won't be ready that one day, that one time. That's true. But day to day, you're more likely to get fired than you are to get fired upon. So
you're right. You're right. But Rich White out in the chat is also right. He says it's better to be unemployed and alive than employed and dead.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. But what if there was no dead ever? That's what I'm saying, is there was no dead, but she's still fired. And then she's got to go to her next job and tell the next possible employer, I got fired for bringing a gun to work.
Right. It's a rough decision, and it's something that each of us
but that's the point,
is ourselves.
Your everyday citizen doesn't want to take that risk because somebody said this is against the rules, and I'm going to obey the rules, so I'm not going to do it.
And if it's a good paying job, if it's a good paying job with good benefits, if you got a lot of time in there, you got that stuff weighing on your mind too. Okay, and like I said, it's more likely that you're going to get caught with a gun and fired than you are going to have to use it to protect your life or somebody else's at work.
But this whole thing, it's why I feel that if the law allows you to carry a weapon, the law should allow you to carry. No one should have the right to tell you can't, as long as it's not a place that's prohibited by law. For instance, where I work, I work in a correctional facility. It's pretty obvious you don't want to bring a firearm into a correctional facility. So that and it's also prohibited by law. So I get that, but if I work at Bob's Widget Works and the law, I don't think I should be prohibited from carrying by anybody, even Bob.
If Bob's Widget Works says you can't carry a gun, and Bob's Widget Works pays really good, has really good benefits, has a good 401k, has lots of paid holidays, allows you flex time so you can be a family person, maybe has a pension plan, whatever, college tuition reimbursement, you name it. I mean, the list goes on and on about some of the benefits you can get from some real careers, not jobs, careers. And when that's on the line, you really, you put up with a lot of BS. If you're flipping burgers, no, because you can just go next door and go flip burgers somewhere else or work. You know, some of these jobs, they're so rinky dink and they're so easy to get. I mean,
so here's the question. Maybe, and just, hey, I want to say hello to Anthony Ganji from Tier Talk out there in Corrections 1. How you doing, sir? Glad you stopped by. We're talking about the Virginia Beach shooting and the fact that it was a gun-free zone. One of the victims had the feeling that something was going to happen, and the night before it happened was speaking with her husband about how she was contemplating taking a weapon to work in violation of policy. Well, she decided to follow policy and not take a weapon and was killed the next day. So we're kind of talking about the morality versus legality of, if your company forbids you from taking a weapon to work, should you? Now, obviously, you and I, where we work, we can't do that. It's forbidden by law and just not a good idea anyway. But for those that where your workplace isn't forbidden by law, should the company be able to tell you not to? I would suggest that if they are going to be able to tell you that you can't carry, that they should be responsible legally, and I think they are morally, but they should also legally be responsible for providing sufficient protection so that someone can't come in when they get off the train at Cuckooville and start shooting the place up.
No, that I agree with. Either provide protection and or be 100% responsible for all damages, death, funeral, providing for the family forever, counseling, medical, whatever it is. If they aren't going to let you defend yourself, because the law will let you, but they're not going to let you, then there needs to be some sort of law saying that they are on the hook for big time money, not just paying for your funeral and setting up a college fund for your kid, but like seriously, if the person says, I'm sorry, I need to go to a counselor 3 times a week for the rest of my life, they're on the hook. Whatever it is, it'll get these companies
providing for your safety.
It'll get these companies to think twice about these policies.
So where do we stop this at? Are we talking about giant corporations, or are we talking about the mom and pop hardware store on the corner? Because then you're going to say goodbye to every single small business in the country overnight.
Or you'll say goodbye to no gun signs.
So, but that's still, I understand the premise behind that, but the fact that this is America means that if I own a snowball stand and I don't want you carrying a gun in my snowball stand, and I tell you when I hire you, right, I tell you when I hire you, no guns in my snowball stand, and you agree and take my money, and we have a business relationship together, employee, employer, and then you violate my rules and I fire you. So
sure,
but if I get robbed and you get shot, and then I have to pay millions and millions of dollars because I didn't let you carry a gun, no one's ever going to open another snowball stand again.
But you know what? The exercise of rights comes with the exercise of responsibility. If you exercise a right, you need to accept the responsibility that goes along with the exercise of that right. For instance, if I'm exercising my First Amendment right and my words incite other people to violence, I should accept that responsibility. Well, if I exercise my right to prohibit someone from carrying a weapon to protect themselves on my premises, then I need to accept the responsibility for providing for their security.
I totally understand that, but then once again, what kind of small ice cream shop on the corner is going to be able to afford to pay for security?
Well, I would.
Well, and then if they don't want to pay for security, then they let you carry your gun
That would incentivize them.
You know
to
why
get
you open
the
an ice
no
cream
gun
stand on
sign.
Do you know why you open the ice cream stand on the corner? That could one day be a chain, by the way. But you know why you open it? You know why you open any small business? You bust your butt. You sacrifice a lot of your time and your life to get this business going. You put your blood, sweat, and tears. You give up taking vacations. You give up a lot of stuff in order to get this business going and make it yours. You know why you do it? You know why Americans do it? It's not only is it the American way, but you get to be your own boss, even though you do have to answer your customers and you do have to follow laws and ordinances and all this other crap. But you get to be your own boss and to make money. And for anybody to say these mom and pops, I'm sick of hearing them, especially with the gun stores. These mom and pops are starving and they're dying and we need to, you've got to be kidding me. Around here, if you own a business, you're filthy effing rich. You're
That's
rich. You're not
absolutely
rich on
that
day
is
one.
absolutely the furthest thing in the world from the truth, Squib. I know all kinds of small business owners, my boss being one, who's not even remotely close to being rich, and he works his butt off 7
They
days a
moved to
week.
Michigan.
Yeah, okay, that's great. I'll send you the bill. I'll pack the
I mean,
U-Haul
here,
tonight, and I'll send you the bill,
there
and
is
then you can
no
buy my
small
house
business.
for me. You know, you mentioned it. You mentioned it in your video today about move to Canada. No, I'm going to stay here because this is where this is my state. This is where I live. This is what my family is at. So I'm not just going to get up and run because something changed that I don't like. What I'm saying is, if we're going to live in a capitalist nation, free nation, if I don't want you to carry a gun in my snowball stand, that should be fine. If you get injured on my property on my time, I already have insurance to cover you for that. Adding a whole bunch of rules and regulations to an American company is not capitalism and it's not freedom. Period. So if you want to, mom and pop or Walmart, the biggest corporations in the world, if they have to hire full-time, fully armed security or let people carry guns in anytime they want or do whatever they want, that's not going to ride. If it did, it would already do that. This is a free nation. If I choose not to let you carry a gun in my store, you have the right not to work for me or shop at my store.
That's true, but if you can't afford the security, you shouldn't get into business in the first place.
Are you crazy? Are you kidding me? What about my roommate upstairs? Took a loan out of a bank years ago to get a van so he could do installation of hardware, doorknobs and shower doors and stuff like that. So when he got an employee, was he supposed to also hire a security guard to follow him around? Because he can't carry a gun in every single person's house or every single contract. So if somebody would have shot him, do you expect him to have to pay all these extra lawsuits that are going to come or whatever? Not every business is a multi-billion-dollar business.
No, but every business has the potential to become that. It does take time and luck and a whole lot of things. It's just like succeeding on YouTube. But I see these air quotes small business, these air quote mom and pops, and I don't see any of them being unsuccessful except the ones that keep buying the restaurant in that bad part, that really hard to get to left-hand turn, that nobody goes there because of the location. Otherwise, mom and pops, I know people who own small businesses. They're rolling in it. They are rolling it. They can afford a lot more. And some of them are really good to their employees. And there are other big companies that have tons of money, but they run like they're a bunch of paupers. And it's kind of disgusting. And your business, it does take a lot to succeed, and a lot of businesses do fail. And I'm not talking about a guy running around in a van, living on a shoestring, trying to make, and if he's only been doing that a short time, that's what, but some of these mom and pops have been around for decades. They've got ways to do it. I don't want to take somebody's private business, private property, and twist their arm and tell them how to live and what to do. But I want something that's going to discourage these people from saying, I'm sorry, but you can't protect yourself and I'm not going to protect you. So what's the stopgap? What's the compromise?
I don't know that there is one, and that's what makes this discussion interesting. Two Live Moo out there, I guess he'd be a good guy to work for. He says, my employees have to carry a gun. Got a $2 super chat out there from Armament and Axes. Says, thanks for the G patch. Hey man, no problem. I got it from Squib, so I passed it on to you. So, that's how it goes, man. You get one extra, pass it on to somebody else. That's how you can thank me, man. Ah, Two Live Moo runs a jewelry store. Well, yeah, I imagine that you would want your employees to be packing there. I sure would.
And he may have to carry additional insurance, and that's an expense too. There's all kinds of expenses that come with running a business that you're required by law. There's all kinds of things you've got to do when you're hiring employees, and believe me, I've had to deal with some of this stuff, not owning a business, but being behind the scenes in the department that runs the business. Some of the stuff is total BS, but you've got to do it if you want, and people do it. And the reason they do it is because you make money. You make ass tons of money.
I suspect somebody would start offering insurance to cover that situation. You know, if you the lawsuit, if you don't provide security, if you don't allow people to carry weapons and you don't provide security, then I'm sure it probably wouldn't be cheap, but I'm sure somebody would start offering insurance for that on the off chance that, something happens.
I think when I looked in the second call defense, they said it's null and void if you carry it at work, not carry it at work, but like if you're a security guard or something like that,
yeah,
it doesn't cover you for that. So if you were at work and you were carrying and you had to use it to defend yourself, that it's one thing. But if you're like a cop or security guard or what you do, correction officer or something like, it's not gonna cover you on the job.
Yeah,
something like that.
But and this is one of the great things I like about the people that we're hanging out with here online, that we can have this discussion. We can disagree vehemently with one another, but at the end of the day, we're not going to storm off and name call and all that other good stuff. Hey, I don't agree
I'm all right.
I don't agree with you, Kingpin, but I love you, brother.
That's okay. People have been wrong before.
I know, and you're allowed to be.
Yeah, and if you want to call me names, I'm good with it because words don't hurt.
One day it might happen to me.
Yeah. You take checks. Rob D says USCCA is the best one I found. Yep, that's why I have it. That's exactly why I carry that insurance, because I think it's the best one you found. It's not a reimbursement thing. It's an upfront. They pay for it, and it's really good. Not that I'm, doing a commercial for them because they don't pay me. Unfortunately, I wish they did. That'd be great. I could be that.
Something I just thought of, and
go ahead,
David, if you can maybe put some validity to this or not. And you live in a state where nobody can conceal carry. Nobody can. And Budget-ish. Okay, Budget and I both live in a shall-issue state. And I have talked to other people over YouTube, Gun Channel's people on YouTube, that live in straight states that are more restrictive than mine, and they have certain strong opinions about things. And it's because that's all they know, because that's what they're used to. I've also had people that live in less restrictive states than mine, even though I don't consider my state restrictive, but they do. They're like, oh my goodness, you have that. It's so bad to live in Michigan. I'm like, what are you crazy? But from my point of view, I don't live in that restrictive, but from them, it's like, that's an infringement. I can't believe it. And I'm just wondering, because concealed carry is not, everybody in your state can pretty much do it, because it's not just something that is so easy like it is in Ohio and Michigan. If maybe that has an effect on your opinion. If concealed carry had been shall issue in your state 20 years ago, and you could just go down and take an 8-hour class and pay your fees and get your picture and fingerprint and all that stuff and get your, real easy like it is for us, would your opinion on it be different? You see what I'm saying?
I don't think so, because my opinion isn't really based on the state that I live in. It's based on the fact that I believe that this is a free country and this is a capitalist country. And when you stack on a bunch of laws, that's contrary to what we're supposed to do. You're supposed to make the right decisions or the best decisions for yourself and then deal with the consequences thereafter. And that's why I also asked, where do we stop at? Do we stop at businesses that make $100,000 a year, or do we do every single business on the planet or a country, and every single business in the country? It's absolutely not feasible for one to do those kinds of things. But all of that doesn't come from the fact that I live in Maryland. It just comes from the fact that I believe that the Constitution is pretty much right on the money on every word that it says and every meaning that it says. And then I also believe more deeply than that, that every human being has inalienable rights. And those rights should be allowed to be expressed.
But
And
what happens when inalienable rights clash? Like the right to defend yourself versus the right to control your property? Because that's really what we're talking about. It's which one takes precedence: the property owners or the business owner's right to dictate what happens within his premises, or the customer or employee's inalienable right to defend themselves. Which one takes precedence? And that's where the conflict here is coming from. I don't know what the answer is. Maybe the answer is, if the law doesn't forbid it, carry, if that regardless of company policy. Maybe the law is, if you don't want to work for somebody that won't allow you to carry and defend yourself, then don't work for them. If you go to work for them, you accept the responsibility. You go to work for them knowing that they're not going to let you. I don't know, but it's an interesting discussion.
Just to clarify, I don't think it's a good idea. I think that any company, if you are in the borders of any of the 50 United States or our territories, and you own a gun legally, you should be able to take it anywhere you want at any time you want. And if you
not
mess
in a jail.
up, well, yeah, I mean, aside from, like you said already, certain places where it's legally restricted for common sense reasons. I mean, there's one CO to every 50 prisoners or something like that. That's
in most actual prisons, that ratio is a lot worse than that. For instance, when I worked at Mansfield, at the Mansfield Correctional Institution, on the pods I worked in was 118 inmates to 2 officers. That's it.
Yeah, so it's not feasible for you to have weapons. It's actually stupid and counterproductive for you to have a weapon. So I get that, but I'm talking about whether it's Walmart, McDonald's, or the accounting office, or the lawyer firm. If you're legally allowed to own that gun, you should be legally allowed to carry it anywhere that you want and at all times. But I also believe that if you walk into my building and I don't want you to have a gun, the same I don't want you to wear a hat, or I want you to wear a shirt and tie as opposed to a tank top. You're going to do what I want, or you're not coming in my building. And if that means it's going to hurt my bottom line, so be it. If that means that I'm not going to get the best employee, then I guess I'm going to have to deal with those things.
But both things you just said are in conflict with each other as you said them.
How is that?
You can carry a gun anywhere, but not in my building. Okay, well, which is it?
Well, I believe that if it was my building, David Bowling's building, bring your gun all you want. But I also believe that when John Smith says, don't bring your gun in my building, that's his building. And he pays the bills for that. Now, if he gets a bunch of government funding or community funding for that building, then no, what you care about doesn't matter. We're going to leave it up to the people, because that's where all of this really comes from. Civilization determines what we accept for right and wrong. That's how it's worked for all human nature. That's where our laws came from. That's where our neighborliness came from. And I think that still works. If the I don't know. I'm trying not to babble on too much. I'm sorry, guys. Go ahead.
No, you're doing good. Okay, look, the kind of law that would force an employer to allow their employee to carry a gun if the employee had already gone through the legal requirements for the state to carry a gun already exists. Not for carrying a gun, but for other things. HIPAA. An employer cannot ask you about your medical. They can't. Okay, well, how is that right? Wait a minute, he works for me. I want to know if he's got this, that, or the other, because if he doesn't, or look at it like this. My state recently legalized marijuana, but an employer can still fire you if you show up high to work. And it's like, well, wait a minute, but they legalized marijuana. That's right, but the employer has the right to say you can't be on drugs and doing this job. And there's other things,
there's actually a state that just outlawed that. I can't remember which one. Was it Colorado? They just outlawed recently, the last couple of days, firing an employee who fails a drug test.
Did you see
But
that
if you're good-
California? Did you see that California has made it so prisoners can possess marijuana in prison,
What?
but they can't smoke it or ingest it in any way, but they can
Then what
possess
would
it.
they do with it? Just look
Well,
at it.
but that's the thing. Normally, like right now, normal thinking would be if you get caught by, like, if Budget catches one of the people in his facility with a dime bag of weed, that person is going to get extra time and another court date. Now in California, they don't do that.
Well, I'm just saying, if you're operating a forklift while you're on any sort of substance, even certain medicines that are prescribed, and you get in an accident, OSHA's going to come in there, and there's going to be all kinds of fines for that employer, not the employee,
Oh yeah.
the employer, because they let them operate the forklift while they were on either medication or marijuana, even though marijuana is now legal here. The same thing. You can't smoke marijuana and drive, but people
Right,
do
but
it. They smoke while driving it because they think it's, and so all I'm saying though is there are laws that are out there that either the state allows something but the employer doesn't allow it, or the employer, it would help the employer if they could do this, but the state or the federal government says you can't do, as an employer, you can't do this. Now, employers bend and break those rules all the time, especially when it comes to payroll. They do. And it's up to the employee to get a lawyer and sue the crap out of them to prove a point that, hey, you're not going to mess with my paycheck. But there's still, this is another situation like that. I think at some point, there's going to be an employer who says you can't bring a gun to work. Somebody's going to survive one of these shootings, and they are going to sue the living crap out of the employer. They are going to win. It's going to make national news, and there's going to be employers that are going to be rethinking their policies because they're like, we don't want to get sued this bad. It's going to take that. Or it's going to take several lawsuits like that in order to get these employers to go, screw it, we're going to let people exercise their right.
You also have to understand that most of these companies are run by their insurance companies. And that's why they don't let you come to work drunk. Not because they're against alcohol or they're against drinking. They're against you screwing something up while you're drunk at work. Same thing with weed, any other kind of medication that you might be on, or, whatever kind of intoxicant you might take. The insurance company says, look, we're not going to pay for that. Make it against company policy to be under any. That's what, if you wreck the forklift, the first thing you're doing while you're getting bandaged up is you're taking a drug test. Because
That is correct.
if you come up that you were under the influence of a drug, that takes the not all of it, but that does take some of the weight off the company and puts it back on the employee's shoulder. Not saying that the employee can get sued civilly for, running over, Mr. Dan's foot with the forklift while he was drunk, but that's just what the companies put it in there for, so they can have some kind of leeway. And that's what random drug testing is about too.
For the most part, though, the employer's on the hook. So I just kind of feel like the employer should be on the hook for, what's going to happen if they say you can't bring a gun in here.
Yep. Well, guys, we're going to go ahead and move on from this. I mean, we're starting to talk this one in circles, and it is an interesting discussion. It's an interesting topic, and I don't think there's any easy answer because, as I said earlier, we're talking about two rights that are butting heads, and it's a tough one to figure out which one should take precedence. So my take is that the individual has to decide whether they're going to follow someone's policy as long as it's not illegal to disobey the policy, and whether they're going to accept the risk of losing their employment over their desire to have the tools with which to defend themselves. And it's not a concern for me, so I really I don't know what I would do. I can sit here and say, well, if it was me, I would carry a gun, but I work in a place that you can't. But on the other hand, I don't really have to worry about it because it's kind of a fortress. So I'm not worried about someone coming in and doing anything. I got to worry about the guys inside. They're already doing stuff. So it's a tough one. And again, I'm glad that we can have this conversation and not devolve into a shouting match. So, but unfortunately, some employers don't want you to even have a conversation. This next one from KCTV5.com. Platte County principal placed on leave after tweet to gun control activists. By Chris Oberholtz, posted June 13th. A Missouri school principal is on paid leave after replying to a tweet from a gun control activist. The tweet was a reply to David Hogg, one of the students who survived the mass shooting at Stoneman Douglas High School last year in Parkland, Florida. David Hogg tweeted, "Join a March for Our Lives in the Brady Buzz in the We Need to Know campaign to get Congress to fund gun violence research. Record your own video explaining why we need to fund gun violence research," and I guess he meant fund gun violence research, and tag your congressmen and senators with "We Need to Know." Hogg tweeted support for research on gun violence, urging people to contact their congressman and ask them to support funding. The 19-year-old has become an activist in support of gun control since surviving the high school shooting that killed 17 of his classmates. You know what? Because I almost blew up on that. But David Hogg did not survive anything. He was on the campus. He was, how many buildings away, nowhere near that piece of filth that shot those kids. So, yeah, he didn't survive shit. Sorry. Anyhow, a school principal with the Platte County School District replied to Hogg's tweet with pictures of himself and his children holding guns. The text of the tweet simply said, "America." It's a personal Twitter account. Platte County principal placed blah, blah, blah. The tweet was posted Thursday, and it was brought to the district's attention on Wednesday. The principal's account has since been disabled. The district is not naming the principal in their statement. On June 11, 2019, a school district employee posted a tweet in response to a comment encouraging Congress to fund research on gun violence. The post was made from the employee's personal Twitter account. Posts from employees' personal social media accounts do not reflect the views or opinions of the Platte County R3 School District. The district learned of the tweet on June 12, 2019, and immediately placed the employee on paid administrative leave while we investigate the situation. We understand why the public response has been strong with regard to student safety in our nation's schools. We intend to address the situation immediately and in a manner consistent with our Board of Education policies, as well as our goal of ensuring a safe and caring environment for our students, staff, and community. Due to the confidentiality of personnel matters, this is all we can share at this time. KCTV5 News is not naming him until we've talked to him or confirmed his identity with the district. So, what a crock of utter shit that these guys, that this school district suspended this guy, even though he's on paid leave, that he might get in trouble for something he posted on his own personal Twitter account. That's garbage. That's completely unjust. I don't care if you work for a school system or who you work for. Your personal stuff is your personal stuff, and particularly when you're not spewing hate, you're not encouraging violence, you're not encouraging perversion, you're not encouraging, well, matter of fact, if he's encouraging perversion, he probably would have been applauded and promoted. But if you're not doing anything other than posting pictures of you and your children holding firearms, which is a constitutionally protected activity, with the caption, "America," there's no justification for suspending anyone for that. None. At least that's my opinion. I mean, hell, that would be like my company, because I work for a government entity, suspending me for my show. Watch, I'll be getting a call in about 10 minutes. But that's just stupid. Squib, we'll let you go first this time. You have any thoughts on this?
Well, first, I'm glad you mentioned that he wasn't a survivor, because he wasn't. He wasn't even in the same building. He was never in any danger. And I'm so sick of the people that were at the event but not actually in the line of fire, calling themselves survivors, just jumping on the bandwagon, trampling on the graves of their classmates. Disgusting. You're a survivor if you actually were in the event. So
Yeah, if you could have been shot by the guy, then perhaps you should be called a survivor. If he couldn't have shot at you, you didn't survive anything.
I'm waiting for the students who graduated the year before to start trying to get survivor benefits or something. You know what I'm saying? So it's just so many people just jump on the bandwagon with that. Now, as far as the whole government entity and them getting into your personal life, no, I'm not a big fan of it. Having been a former government employee, I can tell you once I take off that uniform and leave base, I understand that, you know, some of my benefits follow me and I still need to carry myself, you know, because I do represent. But otherwise, it's my personal life. So, and unless it affects my duties once I come back to work the next day, butt out of it. I don't give a damn, you know, who you are. That was one thing that I did not like as a government employee. And recently I saw some videos from the Commandant of the Marine Corps about Marines need to stop bashing each other on Facebook. And I'm thinking, it's on Facebook. It's not on base. It's not in uniform on duty, you know. So there's a lot of these government agencies that do stuff to get into your personal life, whether you're breaking the law or not, once you're off the clock.
Now,
and that's bullcrap.
I could understand why the Marine Corps might have that policy. It might have something to say about it because of unit cohesion and morale and things like that that could affect, that could adversely impact the warfighting capability. But this is a school principal.
No, the way they're approaching it, they're being a bunch of whiny bitches about it, and it's like that's not very. To me, they're getting soft. But you know, with this principal, he's a government employee, so he does have to carry himself a certain way. He doesn't want to have pictures of him going around the internet where he's at the strip club. You know what I mean? Because he's a principal, right? Or something like that. But
sure.
on the other hand, he is entitled to a personal life. What he does when he puts on that suit and shows up at the school or is at the school administration building is a whole nother thing. Once he drives off that property, you know, unless it's, I mean, you know, it's going to make the news if he gets busted with drugs, right? Or something like that, more so than the average person, because this is somebody that, you know.
But again, that goes back to he wasn't doing anything illegal. He wasn't doing anything immoral. He was, in fact, participating in two constitutionally protected activities, the First Amendment and the Second Amendment.
Right. Well, I don't like the government butting into their employees' lives when they're not on the clock, when they're not on duty, when they're not on premises, when they're not. But I do understand to some extent a certain amount that you have to present yourself.
Sure.
And even somebody in law enforcement has to present themselves a certain way when they're out in public. But this is not, like you were saying, this is not them violating a law or, you know, inciting violence or I mean, they're exercising a constitutional right, like you said. So I think they need to stay out of it and stop using the whole, but he's a government employee kind of thing.
Squid? Not Squid. Dang it. I already talked to you. Kingpin.
Just sticking to this particular case, I think that they're in the wrong. The guy should be able to do whatever he wants. I mean, especially like you already said, Budget. He wasn't breaking the law in any way. He wasn't defaming the school or the company or the ice cream store or whatever what you want to talk about. There was, I guess you could call completely innocent what he was doing. So that's really heavy-handed, and I don't like it. I'd like to ask the people that are in favor of this kind of stuff, you know, take one of those surveys and find out what they think of the Chinese government and their credit score, their social credit scoring, because that's exactly what they do in China. They look at your social credits, you know, what you're posting on social media and the stuff that you put out there in public, and if it's not pro-China the way they think it is, it dings your credit score. And it makes it harder, makes you a target. And that's what's happening here in the United States with the media and this crazy censorship that's going on. And it's got to stop, or it's just going to be China. And the other thing with the whole Hogg thing, from what I understand, is he wasn't even at the school, because his first statement was he rode his bike to the school to start filming. And then, you know, he changed the story to I was at school. So I don't really know, that kid's a liar anyway. But You would think that shows how corrupt the media is, because in my idea, if I own a newspaper, I want the best story out there. And if the best story out there is blood, guts, sex, and rock and roll, then give that to me. But if the best story out there is the hero story, let me hear that too. Or if the best story out there is this little punk kid told a lie about a bunch of his kids at school getting killed, let's call out this little punk.
Yeah. I just think it's disgusting what they did to this guy. And I'm hoping that he does not get any discipline out of it. I'm hoping he's just getting a little paid vacation, because at least they did put him on paid administrative leave. So he's not being financially damaged at this point. So good on them for that. But he shouldn't have been on leave at all.
Why does David Hogg have the right to run his mouth, but this principal doesn't?
Well, David Hogg doesn't represent the Platte County School District.
Yeah, but what I'm saying though is,
and that's what I've noticed. That's why.
This is what I've noticed. If you're a liberal socialist, use the crutch of minority or whatever, you can say whatever the hell you want to say. You can push somebody's buttons. You can lie. You can incite violence. You can do whatever you want, and you're fine. And if you're conservative or hardworking or I don't know, you shut your mouth. You don't have an opinion anymore. And
Pretty
if you
much.
do, we're gonna find a way to penalize you. If not legally, monetarily, one way or the other, you're gonna pay the price.
Pretty much.
Well, that's what I see right here. That's what I see. I see one person. I see two people both within their rights, but one person's penalized because they're on one side of the fence, and the other person is glorified because they're on the other.
Well, and that exposes the bias that we talk about all the time. Particularly in the educational system and academia, the bias that is geared in favor of the liberal. I mean, that's how it is. Well, in other news, here in Ohio, we have a fight coming. So my fellow Buckeyes should pay some attention to this. If you haven't already heard about this, this is a piece from the Buckeye Firearms Association by Chad Baus. AstroTurf Gun Control Group in Ohio pushing for universal background check ballot initiative. Ohio news media are gushing this week over a so-called, this is from Wednesday, June 12th, over a so-called grassroots gun control group in Ohio, a group which is promoting a universal background checks ballot initiative. From the Columbus Dispatch, Ohio voters might have the opportunity to decide whether to require background checks for gun purchases at the same time they vote for president in the 2020 election. Ohioans for Gun Safety announced Monday that it is filing a petition that would effectively require background checks for all gun sales online and at gun shows. The measure, entitled An Act to Close Loopholes in Background Checks on Gun Sales, is designed as an initiated statute. That means supporters must gather enough valid signatures of registered Ohio voters to equal at least 3% of the total vote cast in the most recent gubernatorial election, roughly 135,000 signatures. The names must come from 44 of Ohio's 88 counties and represent 1.5% of the total vote for governor in each of those counties. If the threshold is met, the General Assembly has 4 months to consider the proposal. If it is not acted upon, fails to pass, or passes in an amended form, the petitioners can mount a second petition drive to put the proposed law on the ballot. Another 135,000 signatures are necessary. The proposal would add a weapons control section to the Ohio Revised Code that would require involvement of a firearms dealer or in nearly every gun purchase and a background check. There are several problems with this effort, not the least of this is no longer this is Mr. Boss's words, not the Columbus Dispatch. There are several problems with this effort, not the least of which is that it is not being backed by any truly grassroots group of Ohioans. As we've reported way back in 2017, the supposedly new group, calling itself Ohioans for Gun Safety, is actually made up of the same old anti-gun rights crowd. And judging by their name, website structure, logo, colors, font, etc., billionaire former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg is the real wizard behind the curtain. Again, from the Dispatch, Jim Irvine, president of the Buckeye Firearms Association, is skeptical about the benefit of the proposal, saying it addresses an issue that does not exist. There is no gun show loophole, he said. The rules to buying and selling guns at gun shows are the same as to buy a gun at a gun store or out of the back of a car or a garage or anywhere else. The most common way criminals get their guns is stealing them. So what will this law do to stop those bad criminals from getting guns? Nothing. Irvine's point is borne out in a survey released in January by the U.S. Department of Justice, which was cited in a recent article in America's First Freedom magazine. Among prisoners who possessed a firearm while they committed the offense for which they were imprisoned and who reported the source from which they obtained it, the most common source, 43%, was off the street or the underground market. Another 7% of state and 5% of federal prisoners stole their firearm, and 7% of state and 8% of federal prisoners reported that they obtained the firearm at the location of the crime. About a quarter, 26%, of state prisoners and about a fifth, 21%, of federal prisoners obtained their firearm from an individual in another non-retail setting, such as a friend or family member. However, among prisoners who possessed a firearm during the offense for which they were imprisoned, 7% of state and 10% of federal prisoners serving a sentence in 2016 bought or traded for the firearm from a gun shop or gun store, the analysis stated. About 1%, 0.08, bought or traded for the firearm at a gun show. Few criminals get their guns through the means this proposal seeks to address, and that is exactly why, according even to gun controllers themselves, these laws have failed to work. From another America's First Freedom article, as Lois Beckett noted in The Guardian in 2017, we now have the results of a number of states that experimented with laws requiring criminal background checks on every single gun sale, and those results have proven extremely disappointing for the advocates. Research conducted by some of America's most well-respected gun violence researchers, Beckett reported, concluded that the new laws had little measurable effect, a result that represented a setback for a growing gun control movement that has centered its national strategy on replicating the success it has had in a handful of state capitals. The states to which Beckett was referring were Colorado and Washington, but those two are by no means alone in their failure. A 10-year study of California's background check regime conducted by the Openly Anti-Gun Violence Prevention Research Program and Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, yeah, no bias there, found no net difference between firearm-related homicide rates before and during the 10 years after policy implementation. Per the University of California, Davis, the California investigation compared observed annual firearm homicide and suicide rates in California over 10 years following enactment of the comprehensive background check and misdemeanor violence prohibition policies in 1991, with expected rates based on data from 32 control states that did not have these policies and did not implement other major firearm policies during the same time. The result? No change in the rates of either cause of death from firearms through 2000. So we know the measure that is now being proposed here in Ohio won't address the real source of most criminal guns and thus won't prevent the crimes they commit with them. So why is the Bloomberg crowd still chasing it? Because their real goals have nothing to do with crime reduction, but rather are aimed at eliminating the ban on gun registration, empowering the government to track every firearm in circulation, and when those efforts don't work, demanding more and more gun control laws until the end result is a destruction of the Second Amendment. And I have to agree with them. Gun control is never about the gun, folks. It's always about control. See a new name out there, Joe Matt. Welcome. Hopefully you have been listening for a while and enjoy the show. So there we have it, folks. Here in Ohio, we are facing a battle again. This time against the forces of the jackbooted forces of evil, led by the Bloombergians in their astroturf gun control groups. So let's keep an eye on that and do everything that we can to resist that tyranny. Since we're here at the end of the show, those of you who watch the show regularly know what's coming. Those of you who are new or who have never stuck around to the end, which, by the way, if you're still here listening, and or watching, thank you very much. I appreciate it. We're going to be moving on to what Roll Call 219 says is his favorite segment of all, the self-defense shoutouts. Self-defense shoutouts are not where I am reveling in the death or injury of the bad guy. Self-defense shoutouts are where I am reveling in the fact that the good guy had the means, method, and opportunity to defend themselves against the bad guy. However, I waste very little sympathy on the bad guy because, well, play stupid games, win stupid prizes, right? First up, from Clayton County, Georgia, by Christopher Buchanan. Homeowner shoots alleged intruder dead in Clayton County. Police responding to a shooting in Clayton County soon. Blah, 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 blah. This is from June 7th, by the way. Police responding to a shooting in Clayton County soon learned from an area homeowner that the person suffering the gunshot wound had just attempted to break into his house. According to the Clayton County Police Department, they were called to the 9000 block of Jenny Circle just before 3 a.m. on Friday. They arrived to find a black male, later identified as 18-year-old Javen Jackson of Paulding County, laying at the bottom of the steps at the home. Police said he was injured but alive and conscious at the time. Jackson was taken to the hospital by emergency responders, but died along the way. Further investigation and a conversation with the homeowner provided more detail about the incident, which apparently began when he heard loud banging at his front door. The homeowner said the suspect broke the glass next to the front door and reached to unlock it before making entry. Police said that as Jackson made his way up the stairs, the homeowner grabbed a rifle and shot several times in the alleged robber's general direction. What do you need a rifle for, right? Jackson was hit in the lower extremities, according to police, and managed to crawl down the stairs toward the front door before police arrived. Police haven't released the name of the homeowner, and their statement gives no indication he is facing any charges in the shooting. People have the right to defend themselves, said Major Anthony Thuman with the Clayton County Police Department. That's the point we want to drive home. You have the right to defend yourself. Police said Jackson had previously had several run-ins with their department as a juvenile. Neighbor Devontae Pace said he's now considering getting a security system for his mom's house. That's crazy. Nothing like this has ever happened here in a million years. We've been having little problems with people breaking into stuff, not into houses, but stuff like that, Pace said. Well, don't think it can't happen to you. Yeah, just because it hasn't happened here doesn't mean it won't happen here. Criminals, I live in a nice community. It's got a lot of nice houses. It's not a rundown slum. Things like that don't happen here. Well, guess what? Where do you think the criminals go to break in? The nice places, right? Next up, from Kansas City, Missouri, from KSHB.com, posted June 11th. Store employee shoots, kills robber in Overland Park, police say. Kansas City, Missouri. The store employee shot and killed an armed robbery suspect Monday night in Overland Park. Around 7:45 p.m., an armed man attempted to rob a Boost Mobile store near 76th Street and Metcalf Avenue. Officer John Lacey, a police spokesman, said the robbery suspect demanded cell phones and jumped over the counter. An employee inside the store was armed and fired one shot, killing the man, police said. The suspect's wife, who was outside, ran to the door after the shooting. The wife was being questioned by police as well as the store employee, who was cooperating. The man who was killed was later identified by police as Deshaun L. Brim of Raytown, Missouri. The store owner was also at the scene. Lacey said police plan to review surveillance video. He also said police are not actively searching for additional suspects or witnesses. Next up, I think this is the last one. Yep, last but certainly not least, from the Times-Picayune in New Orleans by Michelle Hunter. From June 13th, store employee shoots armed robber during LaPlace holdup, sheriff's office says. An employee of LaPlace convenience store shot and wounded an armed robber who tried to hold up the business on Thursday morning, according to the St. John the Baptist Parish Sheriff's Office. Authorities have not yet released the name or condition of the suspect, who was taken to a hospital after the shooting. The robbery occurred just before 9 a.m. at an unnamed store in the 400 block of Belterre Boulevard in LaPlace, the sheriff's office said. The suspect entered the store brandishing a gun, but an employee who was also armed fired, shooting the suspect in the neck, the sheriff's office said. No one else was injured. No other details were available about the case. So there you go, folks. Once again, just as I do every week, I give you some examples of what NPR says doesn't happen. The good guy with a gun stopping the bad guy. Thankfully, these people weren't in gun-free zones, and thankfully, they're not going to go to jail for it. So, that all being done, it's time to take down the awnings and roll up the sidewalks. I'd like to thank Squib and Kingpin for coming by. Kingpin, would you like to leave us with any final thoughts, any plugs, anything you want to promote?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Make sure everybody checks out Budget at his new time, 11-ish p.m. Eastern on Friday
11:30.
nights. 11:30
Yeah,
Eastern.
we're moving it to 11:30.
Okay, cool. And check out tomorrow morning. Dead Horse is having a Saturday reloading chat that he's going to do every Saturday. I think it starts at like 9 a.m. and it'll run till about 3 p.m. Everybody's welcome. If you know about reloading, you're welcome to hop on the panel. And there you go.
All righty. Squib, anything you'd like to leave us with, sir?
I can't think. I think I'm getting so tired. I can't think of anything. But I do kind of like doing the show late after work. It is kind of nice doing this from my recliner instead of standing next to a machine. So I think I kind of like this time.
Good. Well, I want to thank everybody out there in the chat. Again, as always, I am amazed and humbled that you've decided to spend this time with me on a Friday night that you could be doing absolutely anything else. I also want to thank those of you who are listening to this in the replay. This is, I hope that I've made whatever task you were doing as you're playing this in the background enjoyable. Because I know that's what I tend to do when I'm listening to somebody on the replays. I've got it on in the background while I'm doing something else, and hey, that's great. I'm just glad that you wanted to hear my voice and listen to me and Kingpin and Squib hash it out. As always, I want to leave you with the encouragement to, especially those of us here in Ohio. What with the story we just shared about the anti-gun ballot initiative, that we need to make sure that we're on top of it. We need to make sure that our Congress critters and elected representatives know what we think. They should be familiar with our number on their caller ID. They should know our voice on their voicemail. They should they should know our email address. And hell, there was one, I forget who it was, that said that their one friend had a cease and desist letter. They contacted their congressman so much. That's doing it right there. So make sure that you let them know what you think. Send a telephone, telegraph, snail mail, email, smoke signals, heliograph, semaphore, carrier pigeons, bicycle messengers, 2 cans and a string. Do whatever you have to do to let them know what you think, and never, ever, ever give up the fight. Everybody have a good weekend.